this by starting the link will be if you're watching this, I'm having some serious technical difficulties right now, and it's okay. I am working through it. Other problem. Perfect. So this is cool. I've got Michael, I've got Katya, I've got Jessica. All right, people are starting to show up. I'm sorry, guys. See, these are the things that that come up that clearly I'm creating because I'm nervous about it because it's my first webinar, and it's okay. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. You're here. Okay, so the Q&A feature works now. What I was saying on the other one, that you guys couldn't hear me anyway, so I'm glad that it's actually working out for the best. The problem was, despite the fact that Lauren, the dear sweetheart that she is, she actually helped me do a test run last night, and we worked out all the kinks, and I made sure that the Q&A feature worked on the test run, of course, but the Q&A wasn't working on this one when I started it up, and apparently also the sound wasn't working either. So it all works out for the best. And anybody who misses it, you can come back and you can watch the recording, including the first 5 minutes of me sitting and talking and typing to myself. So All right. Let's see. So the Q&A feature, there's a couple things, a couple technical things to be aware of. You are probably getting between a 30 to 60-second delay between what I'm saying and when you're getting it. So when you pop up with the questions and the comments, you're probably going to be popping up about a minute after whatever it is that you're asking has been talked about. And that's why what I would like to do is, as I go through, I'm going to pause every so often and say, okay, this is Q&A time. What questions do you have? And then I'll take a minute and maybe grab a glass of water, and then we can come back and start answering questions. Yeah? And I want to keep this, you know, to around an hour, really no more than that. I think that's enough time for us to, you know, talk about what we need to talk about, ask the questions we need to ask, and still go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. So, are you guys ready? I'm ready. I was born ready. Hold on just a second. All right. So, what I'm going to do is I just sort of given myself an outline so that I can keep this focused, because otherwise I will go talk about all of the deep, dark mysteries and secrets of the universe, and we would be on here for hours. So I'm going to stick with the outline. And I think, you know, a lot of people want to know, you know, how did you get here, and what is it that you know, how is it that you have created these, you know, the beautiful relationships that I have now, and it just keeps getting better. How did I get here? Because a year ago it was shit. And so I think what I want to do is just start out by just giving you a brief outline of my story. A lot of you guys in here already know me, so you know a little bit about where I'm coming from. Some of you guys don't. Basically, here's the really summed up version. Yeah. When I was a little boy, the thing I wanted most in the world was to please my dad. I wanted his approval, and I never could. I never felt like I could. It was like no matter what I did, he saw me as this hopelessly irresponsible and airheaded kid. And you know, he was always expressing his disappointment in me. I remember sitting underneath the bedroom window and listening to him rip my mother a new asshole. I need to keep my language down a little bit. I tend to be colorful in my language. I'm going to try and tone it down, but it is part of how I express myself, so I hope you guys don't have too big of an issue with that. But the thing, I sat there and I listened to him, you know, just rip her apart, because I was 8 years old and I was still in fantasy land. That's what he said. I was 8 years old. I was a kid, right? But I didn't sit there and go, well, I'm just a kid, Dad. I sat there and I went, oh, there's something wrong with me. And so it's like I learned how to suppress my feminine, my intuitive, my heart-based qualities, which is a really big part of who I am, in an effort to be more responsible. But by the time he died, which was when I was 15, I still had never achieved that point of being good enough for my dad, or feeling like I was good enough. And so when he died, unconsciously made the decision that I was completely unworthy of his love, and that was the thing that shaped my life. And so over the next several years, I went to work and I was trying to please all of these father figures in my life, and I had a period there where I achieved some incredible material success. You know, I married a beautiful woman. I bought my first house when I was 25. I had my own business. I was making 6 figures a year. It didn't matter what milestone I achieved. I just felt these awful feelings of worthlessness. You know, I mean, I was smoking a pack, maybe 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Early on in my marriage, almost from the beginning, I started having a series of affairs, one-night stands, and some of them more long-term affairs. And it was just this search for external approval, and compounded by self-loathing for what I was doing, right? This is such a cycle. And that went on for the first 6 years of my marriage. And then at some point, you know, I reached such a point of disgust and self-loathing that I finally went to Sandra and I said, I got to tell you something. And she had no clue. She was absolutely blindsided, you know. And my biggest fear, my terror, was that I would lose her, because my entire sense of self-worth up to that point was built on her. She's a fantastic woman, and so when she came into my life, it was this sense of maybe I am worth something because she thinks I'm worth something, and that's where it was built on. And so when I confessed to her, and I knew that she was going to leave me, which she didn't, but I knew she was going to leave me, and so what I was facing was the uncovering of this wound of these deep feelings of worthlessness. I was having to face my own worthlessness if she left me. And but I faced it, right? And that's a key that we're going to talk a lot about as we go through this journey. But the reward for that from the universe was that you know, we worked through a lot of that stuff, and it came out the other end, and I became a father. And for the first time, the world was just no longer about me, right? And suddenly I wanted to be the best father I could be. I wanted to be what my father was not. And so I started asking myself all the questions. Who am I? What are my values? What do I want to teach my son? And I realized that this empty life that I had created was not what I wanted for my son. And I said, oh, I've got it. The answer is to stop trying to please everyone else and start trying to please myself. And I was kind of on the right track there, but not really, but kind of. And so, and the other thing too is I was looking at the world and I was saying, this world is just messed up. This is not what I want to leave my son. And I was looking at my life and I was saying, my life is just material and empty, and that's not what I want to teach my son. And so I came to the conclusion that, you know, the solution was to drop off the grid, just to step out. And so I gave up everything that we had, and we abandoned mainstream society, so to speak, and we moved to Costa Rica. But up to that point, I hadn't done the inner work. It was all about the world out there, right? The world out there is not what I want for my son. And you know, so, and I thought, hey, I'm finally doing it right. I'm trying to find myself. And you know, part of moving away was moving away from all the expectations and all of the uh, pressures of my family and my belief systems and all of those things. But the thing is that the voice, as we are all starting to realize, is the voice is in here. It's in my head, right? And so that voice was still going, "You're not good enough. You're not good enough. You're not good enough." And it didn't take very long before I was unfaithful again. And that was the point where she did leave me. And she took my son, who was 18 months old at that time, she took him and she moved back to Germany, and I hit rock bottom. I remember sitting there alone on the night of my 30th birthday, and the only people that I had to celebrate it with were the neighbors, the Costa Rican neighbors, and they had some guests arrive unexpectedly, and so the party became about the guests and not about my birthday. And I went outside and I cried and I cried and I cried, and I felt so empty. I started drinking. I started, just screwing whoever I could get into bed. Just trying to fill that emptiness, that empty space. 9 months. After going through all of that hell, I finally hit this point where some things started to click, and I did a Vipassana course, something that came up in my life. I did a Vipassana course, and I met some people at that course, and one of them was this gentleman named Esteban from Colombia, and Esteban had something. And I didn't know what it was, but he had something that made me want to be around him. And now I know what it was. Esteban, he was deeply connected with himself. He was awake. But that lit something in me. And this, by the way, is the power that we have when we start to uncover this in ourselves, that we learn how to hold the space for others. Not because we're trying to hold the space for others, but just because in the presence of our own being who we are, it naturally affects other people, and it touches them, and they say, "That's what I want." And so that's what happened with me with Esteban. But I was completely unconscious to all of this. I just knew that, hey, I really like this guy, and there's something here. So long story short, I ended up working things out with Sandra. I came over here to Germany. I made the decision I was going to be that good and faithful husband and father. I'm going to redeem this marriage. I'm going to do it right, by damn. I'm finally going to step up and man up, and I'm going to be good enough for my father. So I did. And for 3 years, I took, all of these things, these things that were starting to come up inside of me, and I squashed them down because I was going to be this good man and this good father, and I did it down to a T, to where I was working as a carpenter, which is what my father was. I mean, I was literally doing everything to please him, and I was completely unconscious to this fact. What I was conscious to was that all of my relationships were miserable. My relationship with my family, I had distanced myself so far from my family that I moved halfway around the world. I couldn't talk to my mother without either hanging up the phone on her or turning it into a screaming match. And I hated my father. He'd been dead 18 years, and I hated him. I hated him. And my relationship to my son, to Caitlin, was, no matter how hard I tried to be a better father than my father was, it seemed like it was just turning into an exact replica of what my relationship to my father was. And, you know, my marriage, even though we had worked through all of this other stuff, and we had come so far, we were just in this toxic pool of resentments and hurts, and you know, subconsciously I resented her because I felt like I was stifling who I was in order to be this good father and this good husband for them. I resented my family unconsciously because I was doing this for them. So that's, you know, that's where I was, and where this all shifted was I started to get really sick. My body was just rebelling, and I would go to the doctors, and nobody could tell me what was wrong, what the problem was, and so long story short, Esteban had once told me about ayahuasca, and it kept popping up on my periphery. And if you don't know what ayahuasca is, you can ask me about it afterwards. It's something that I have a lot to do with these days. But I ended up going down to Peru, and I did some work with ayahuasca. And it opened me up. There was this process that it took me through. And long story short, I had a ceremony one night where I experienced myself for the first time as what I really am, which is love. I experienced myself as whole and perfect and complete, and it was just the most profound experience that I had ever had up to that point. And I cried for 2 days after that, because it was like remembering a place that I didn't even know I had lost. And it was this remembering that I had been searching for in all of those empty corners and in the arms of all of those women and the bottom of all the beers, and you know, and so I came back, and I was just in this state of complete and utter shock, because I had experienced this. I had awakened. I had this moment of awakening. I had experienced this deep connection, this oneness, and experienced myself as more than my body and my identity and my thoughts. I was beyond all of that. And then it closes back up, and then you're you again, and I was in shock. And so my life just became this search to recover that. That's how it started out. I was going to recover it. And it took me a long time to realize that what I was doing was uncovering it. So what it is that I'm going to share is what I have learned since that experience. Yeah. And the things that I'm going to share with you are tools that have been given to me. What I've been doing since then, since that time, is I've been working really intensively with different plant sacraments like ayahuasca, you know, San Pedro and other ones like that. And these are teachers, my dear beloved LBEers. These are teachers that are a gift from nature, from the divine, to help us uncover our truest selves. But it's not the only path up the mountain. You don't need ayahuasca. You don't need San Pedro. You don't need mushroom. You don't need these things. All they do is this: they show you something, but they are not going to automatically take you up there. They just take you up for a moment and show you, hey, this is what it looks like when you're a little higher up the staircase of consciousness, my beloved Levi. This is what it looks like. So now, go live that way. Let that shine. Let that come out. Yeah. And so I'm going to share with you guys the lessons that I have had with that, because the result of this has been nothing less than incredible. You know, my relationship with my father has been healed. My relationship with my mother has been healed. My relationship with Sandra is the best it's been in 15 years. It's better than it's ever been. The intimacy and the communication and the trust and the respect and the appreciation. And she's on her own journey now. It took her a little while to work up the courage, but as she started to see the transformation happen in me, she worked up the courage to start going on her own journey. Yeah. This is really cool, because you know, it's not about the other person. It's not about getting them. It took me a long time to let go of the idea of trying to get her to go on this journey with me, and I had to let go of that. Yeah. So once I did let go, suddenly I created this vacuum. I created this space for her to just be who she is. And it's okay for her if she wants to go on this journey or not, if she wants to wake up or not, if she wants to be, you know, on fire or not. She's perfectly fine the way she is. And the moment that we give people that space, it touches them in a way that transforms them. And the irony and the paradox of it is that as long as you're trying to touch them in a way that transforms them, you'll never do it. So that is basically my story, guys. And you know, the summary of it is we can have an extraordinary life. We can have extraordinary relationships and results if we can uncover our most authentic self and then center our being around that. So, why are we here? You know, I invited you guys here for a discussion about having conscious, awakened relationships, right? And there's a lot of topics that have come up. You know, we all know what a painful relationship is like. There's things that you guys have mentioned, things like jealousy, fear of abandonment, codependency, feelings of not being enough, wanting to satisfy the other person's needs, the lack of communication, lack of honesty, the guilt and shame, sexual frustration, wanting to be swept off your feet or wanting to do the sweeping, fear of hurting the other person, dealing with infidelity, heartache, separation. There's a whole list of stuff. You know, on the flip side of that, there's a whole list of things we want. We want openness, we want trust, we want communication and respect, and we want to have relationships of interdependence. We want fullness and satisfaction with ourselves without having to rely on somebody else for it. And we're all waking up to that. So my thought was, let's start with getting to the root of what it means to have a conscious relationship. What is that, right? What are relationships? Because what I've come to understand is that life is made up of only two things, and that is relationships and the stories that we have about relationships. That's it. all of life is made up entirely of relationships. So what is it? Like, the dictionary defines a relationship as the way in which two people or things, two or more people or things are connected, or the state of being connected. So a conscious relationship, consciousness is just awareness, right? That's all it is. A conscious relationship is a relationship in which we are aware of the way in which we are connected. So awareness leads to self-awareness. And this is interesting because, as I mentioned in that video that I threw up yesterday, I never said anything in any of my invitations that I posted when I started this group. I never said anything about, hey, let's get together and talk about learning how to love ourselves. And yet, from the moment that we started this group, from the moment we first started posting and sharing, that is naturally what we've been talking about the most. Why? We intuitively know that this is where it starts, that this is where it starts and ends, that this is the alpha and omega, right? But what we often fail to grasp is just how significant this realization is, right? Because, as I mentioned yesterday, it's every relationship is filtered through the self. Every relationship, your money, your health, your connection to the earth, your connection to God, your children, your business, everything gets filtered through this. So clearly, this is the most important and most critical discussion that anybody could be having with themselves. How to have a relationship with yourself, how to love yourself. So then we get down to the question of, well, okay, what does it mean to love yourself? You know, there's some people that say, I love myself 12 times a day. That's not what we're talking about. There's a couple things that I've come to realize about love. And I think maybe we can start with what it's not. Love is not affection. And this is where we often interpret it to be. It's this deep affection that we have for someone or something. That's not what it is. And it's not compassion. It's not appreciation. It's not gratitude. I think that those are all byproducts of love. But that's not what love is. Love is the fullest expression of our being. It's what exists when all the stories and the judgments and the beliefs and the thoughts and everything falls away. It's what's left over. And it's funny because we say, I want to learn how to love unconditionally. Right? I want to learn how to love beyond expectations. And it's funny because the truth is, you already know how. All true love is unconditional love. And everything else is just negotiating and bargaining in codependence. It's the externalization of your fulfillment. Everything else. You can't You can't get love. Yeah? And I invite you to think about that for a second. You cannot get love. You can't receive it. And if you have a hard time understanding what I'm saying, think about this for a second. You can love me with all of your heart, and if I don't want you in my life, or I don't want to reciprocate that love, it doesn't make any difference, right? What's my point? My point is that all feelings of love come from within you. And things may come up that evoke that love. You may see a beautiful sunset that just evokes that feeling, right? Or you have an intimate moment with your partner, or you hold your little baby for the first time. That's one of the best ones. I caught both of my children when they were born. I caught them, right? But those moments didn't insert the love into me. They just evoked it, what naturally is there. And we forget that. We've forgotten that, right? We're here to remember. We're here to walk each other home. So, so that's a little bit about, what I've come to understand about love. So then the only thing left really to talk about is, who is the self? If I'm going to learn how to love me, then who am I, right? And the thing about that is, I don't want to get really esoteric and try and teach you guys the mysteries of the universe, because who we are is not who we think we are, and I can tell you, and I'm not going to be telling you anything new. We've all heard all of this stuff, and some of us really grasp it to different degrees, but we all know this, right? Because this is what's been being told to us in all of the sacred texts by all the mystics and the saints for centuries. I'm not my stories, I'm not my body, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my ego, blah, 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 blah. Right? So we know that what we are is love, and we know that we're the essence of our being. The stuff is not new. So why are we still struggling with it? Well, I propose that the reason why is because we understand it intellectually, and there's a difference between intellect and intimacy. And that's the journey that we're making. That's the journey the entire world is making right now, is shifting from the head to the heart. And if you grew up speaking English, you kind of got cheated. Because in English, we have the word knowing, right? Knowing, I know the alphabet. I know my son. In German, however, you have two words for knowing: wissen and kennen. And in Spanish too. Hey Bernie, if you're watching, you know this, right? Saber and conocer. And there's a difference, right? Wissen and saber are the same thing, and it means to know something, right? To know about something. And then kennen and conocer, those are like to be familiar with something. And that's the difference that we're talking about. So shifting from an intellectual understanding to an experiential understanding, and that's what we're here for, right? You might not, and here's the thing too, is we don't have to be enlightened in order to start operating from a more enlightened point of view. You might not experience yourself yet as one with all things. I know that I don't get long periods of that experience in my life. But what would happen if you just started acting from that space anyway? Because what we're talking about is the golden rule, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself. See the other in yourself, and etc., etc., etc. And that's where we get to the point where we're talking about the big life is a full-length mirror. Somebody shared in the group a post from Jeff Brown the other day, and Jeff Brown was kind of saying, "Hey, let's get real about this. This whole life is a reflection of you." And he starts talking about how we can discern things, and he's right, in my opinion. He's right, but that discernment that he's talking about doesn't do any of us a damn bit of good until we've learned how to separate it from judgment. And I think most of us, if not all of us, are still struggling with that. And so I think it's a good idea to set this whole thing of I can discern good from bad and right from wrong. Set that aside for a minute and just allow life to be a full-length mirror and allow everyone to be a reflection of yourself. Because that's the only way to really move beyond judgment. And judgment is it's the border, right? It's the limitation that keeps us from experiencing ourselves as the essence of our being. So, do you have to embody on to practice operating from it? No, you don't. As my dear friend and brother Ollie once said, he shared his experience. He found his way to love quite the opposite as the way that a lot of other people do. Most other people say, well, first you have to uncover it in yourself, and then you can spread that out to the world. And Ollie says, well, that's not how I did it. He says, I just started practicing loving everybody, making love to everybody. I would make love to the cashier at the grocery store as I was going through the checkout line, and I would just practice being love until I started to uncover it within myself, and then it became more and more natural. So you can approach it either way, but the point is that if you want true peace and love in your life, to sum up everything that I've just said, it boils down to know thyself on the level of experience and not on the level of intellect. And so, this is all fantastic and great and good, but the mysteries of the universe are wonderful, and it's a great thing, but how do we do that, right? How do we do it, Levi? How do you actually, step by step do it? I'm going to share with you what I have figured out. I'm going to give you the tools as I've applied them in my life. But before I do that, this is why I want to open it up for the Q&A and invite you guys to whatever questions or thoughts or anything that you want to pop up. I'm going to take a just a couple minutes and let you guys ask whatever questions. I'm going to take a quick bathroom break, and I'll be back. Okay? I love you guys. I really appreciate you too. This group has been such a beautiful experience for me, and clearly it has been for you as well. And I just appreciate the opportunity to share and express and facilitate this whole thing. So thank you. All right, I'll be right back when I hear what questions you guys have. I'm back. All right. So here's a question that's come up. So if no one can make you feel love, what is the point of everyone else on Earth? It's funny because when I think of that, I feel lonely, which I am aware that loneliness is an emotion that shows me that a belief that I am carrying isn't resonating. Well, just bear in mind that what I'm sharing is just what I've learned, and this is my experiences, right? And this is what's so beautiful about the whole thing, about the whole mystery, is that nobody can really explain it, right? Nobody can actually show you. Nobody can talk you and guide you on your way to enlightenment or into pure love. We have to take that journey for ourselves, and you know, that journey just involves uncovering and getting in contact with that thing that is beyond words, right? Which is why we have to get to this level of experiencing it rather than understanding it intellectually, because anything that we understand with the mind is not it. because the mind itself, thoughts themselves, all of this rises out of our essence, right? Out of that spark of divinity, that God within us. And so the mind cannot grasp what is beyond thought. And I think that it's important to understand that we can't get love from the other person, because it's not anything external to us. There is no other person, right? And I think that's maybe what you're talking about when you say, well, it makes me feel lonely. You know, in a sense, it is, you are alone, but you're not. It's not lonely. When you realize that everything is within you, there's nothing lonely about it, right? And you realize that that this whole experience is, it's just a dance, guys. It's just a dance. It's just the universe, God having fun. And you know, what is loneliness? Loneliness is the belief that I'm not enough, that I'm small and I'm separate and I'm disconnected. Loneliness is the belief that there is something separate from me and I am without it. So, those are just my thoughts. It's a good question. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Oh, I'm looking at the bottom, and questions are popping up on the top. All right. So this question here. So looking for love is pointless, assuming that love is already there and has always been, is what activates its presence in our lives. Assuming that love is already there and has always been is what activates its presence in our lives. I would strongly agree with that. I would even go so far as to say it's not assuming that it's there, already there, but experiencing it. Right? We're on this search to uncover something that is already there. It's the only thing that really is there. Like I said, I could get really esoteric about enlightenment and all of that stuff, but really, guys, it's really simple. You want to have love in your life, you just be love. And you step past all of the thoughts and all of the things that make you think that you can't, that you're not good enough, that it's not going to work, that they'll reject you, that whatever. Those are stories. Right? Remember I said there's two things in the universe. There's relationships and there's stories about the relationships. Stories have their place and should also be understood. But when you take away the stories, all that's left is a relationship. the connection. Let's see. I am. Let's see. Is loving oneself the same as acceptance or allowing? Allowing without criticism and judgment. That is a great question, Bob. And that's something that we're going to get into as we go through the tools. But the short answer is yes. In my experience, yes. Let's see. Oh, we are. How are we doing on time? I guess I'm not going to have much luck keeping this under an hour. Well, we'll go as long as it needs to go, and if you guys need to go, then take off, and you can come back and watch the rest when it's finished. Just see. There we go. I guess my biggest challenge is the doing part. As you said, coming from the heart instead of the mind. I find myself stuck in the mind most of the time. How do you make that shift? It's a great question. That's what we're going to get into. And I'm going to give you a couple of specific tools that have helped me and a lot of other people I know. Let's see. Ooh, I like this one. The great thing about love, the more you share it, the more there is to share. Why share it with everyone and not share it with yourself? It's like saying that you can feel lonely in a room full of people. This is in response to Lauren's question. Oh, Helen. Helena, I'm not even saying your name right, am I? It's Helena. Helena, you're awesome. I love you. You are awesome. Just remember that. And okay. So, unless you guys have some really profound questions, I'm just going to go ahead and move into the really practical nuts and bolts part of it all. And we're going to have fun with this. What I'm going to try to do, I'm trusting that this is going to work out just fine. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to try and share my screen with you so that you can see what's on my screen. I've tried to close down all of the naked pictures and all the other stuff ahead of time, so if anything pops up that is inappropriate, just let me know. I'm kidding. I'm being facetious, guys. And how do I share my screen? Okay. Oh, there's one more question that just popped up here. And it is, hey Levi, do you consider yourself the doer? Do you consider there to be someone home within you? And who is? It's a really great question, really esoteric question. Be happy to discuss with you ahead of the webinar, but I just want to get into the nuts and bolts and really let's get into the practical part of just uncovering the love, sharing the love. Where is it? Here it is. All right. So you should be able to see what is on my screen here. Yes, you can. This is step one. Step one. is own your beautiful bullshit, right? And we talked about this a second ago in regards to Jeff Brown and his awesome comment. What Jeff was saying in that comment, by the way, is very valid, but I think for the sake of really practicing love beyond expectations, it would do us a lot of good to remember that life really is a mirror. There is no other, right? One of the things that I'll just share with you real quickly, an experience that I had in working with these plant sacraments, was a really, really deeply beautiful lesson or experience in which I went through what I would just call hell, and hell was nothing more or less than an eternal circle of my mind going in circles and trying to grasp something. And when I finally broke through out of that and came up out of hell, I came up out of that, and I was in tears, and I was saying, I forgive you, I forgive you. And here's why. We have really grown up and been conditioned with this idea of good and bad and right and wrong and dark and light and all of this stuff. Yeah? And yet sin, as a lot of you probably already know, sin and the definition of sin, originally, in the original Aramaic, sin simply meant to miss the mark, like an archer shooting at his target and he misses. It's to miss the point. It's to miss the entire point of life. And this is it. This is the point of life. It's just to love it. Love it. Love everything about it. Love it. Appreciate it. Enjoy it exactly as it is, and see it in all its splendor and all its beauty. And so sin is nothing more than to miss that point. And that puts us straight into hell. The hell that's created by the mind. And all that forgiveness is, when we forgive somebody else, or when we're forgiven, it's not forgiveness because you did something wrong. Forgiveness is just recognizing the self in the other. It is seeing the divinity. It is seeing God in that other person. That's it. Yeah. So life is a mirror. So why is it beautiful bullshit, though? Well, that's the question. Why is it beautiful bullshit? It's because it's yours. It's your bullshit. You created it. So all the bullshit in your life, if you take 100% ownership of all of it, and you start to realize that it's yours, and even though it may be bullshit, and not all of it is, but even though it may be bullshit, you created it. And that's what makes it beautiful. You are the creator. You're the creator in your life. Not the little you, not the you, the I, the ego, but you, the true you. You created all of this. And when we realize that, we know that we can create something else, right? I hope you guys are writing these down, but if you're not, then I'll share it with you. I'll try and put it together in a document and share it with you in the group afterwards. So this is step 2. Know your why and face your fear. So once you've owned your stuff and you've decided, okay, I am going to own the fact that I take complete responsibility for everything. I'm leaving the valley of the victim, and I am going to start climbing up this glorious mountain. You've got to know why you're doing what you're doing. You know, the true why. And if you don't know it, you'll get there. You'll know it soon enough. If you start out going, well, it's because I want to have you know, better intimacy, or I want to have you know, less stress. Well, really, what it is you just want to get to the fullest expression of your being. That's what is beneath all of this hunger and all of this longing and all of these feelings of lack and emptiness. Is we just want to fully express ourselves the way we were meant to. And once we know why, then we got to face the fear. Step into the forest where the shadows are darkest. Right? And if you see, the other thing that I put here was, if you're not clear where your problem lies, then lies are probably your problem. It's just a matter of, you know, being honest with yourself, and that's difficult to do. It's really hard to see, and this is why, especially in the beginning of the process, it really helps to have help. You know, you've got this awesome support group, this group that we've created, and you know, you've got people like me, and there's a ton of people that you can turn to. It's a process getting to a point where you really uncover your truest self, and you can connect with that, and you have that deep and strong connection with your own inner mentor, your own inner higher self. There's a lot of stuff that has to be uncovered to get there, and to be honest, it's a never-ending process, right? The deeper I go, the more I realize that I'm always ever just at the beginning. I'm just always ever scratching the surface. It just gets deeper and deeper and more beautiful. So, getting off track there. Just face your fears. Just you know, look it in the eye, step forward, and do it. Whatever it is that scares the shit out of you, that's probably what you need to be doing. Yeah? It ain't broke, don't fix it. When we are operating from a space of I'm trying to fix myself, we're automatically assuming that it's broken, and it's not. You're not. There's nothing wrong with you. It's an important point to remember. Yeah? There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. And resisting what is, arguing with the reality that you have co-created, is an argument you're always going to lose. So when we find it within ourselves to love what is, exactly as it is, and appreciate our experiences for exactly what they have given us, all of our experiences, even the worst, and to appreciate the people who helped us to create those experiences and experience those experiences. The demons, the people that we've demonized in our lives. Right? You guys remember Ali, what she shared in the group there, and you know, she was demonizing her ex. But it's all just a reflection of the self. And finding peace with what is what allows us to accept it and to love it. And then from that space of love, that space of loving and accepting it exactly as it is, we are able to make conscious choices And from those conscious choices, we create new experiences. But as long as you're resisting, it's never going to shift, because the source of the problem hasn't shifted. Because the truth is, there are no problems, right, Michael? Alright, so commit fully to your own path. It kind of speaks for itself. You know, taking that irrevocable step, taking the leap that you can't go back from. It's huge. It's huge. It's taking the red pill. To have integrity in a way that it costs you something, just leap. Commit yourself, and you don't look back. Love and honor yourself. Having the peace and the intimacy with others is never going to be possible until we have the peace and the intimacy within ourselves. Right? And by this, I'm not just talking about, hey, this nebulous concept of love yourself that we've been talking about. I'm talking about actually doing, you know, Lauren, you do a great job with this, actually taking the time to love and appreciate yourself. Bernie was mentioning this. He gets up in the morning and he looks at himself in the mirror, in the buff sometimes, I think he said, and he acknowledges himself. Actively take the time to express appreciation and love for yourself. This one, extraordinary begins where ordinary ends. And this has been the whole point of doing these videos, the vulnerable share, right? You know, this event for me, this webinar hangout thing, this is a big leap for me too. And if we want to have extraordinary lives and extraordinary relationships and you know, extraordinary being, the path to authentic intimacy cannot be found through what we know about relationships and what we've been programmed to recreate. So unless you're prepared to brush aside everything that you've been taught and led to believe, and instead let personal experience be your teacher, you're not going to find your way into authentic intimacy. And the only way to have personal experience is to do it, to step past the boundaries, to stop defining ourselves by what we will and won't do, by what we like and we don't like, by our judgments, and by our fears, and by what we want people to see and don't want them to see. When you start having to do things that make you feel vulnerable, the reason why that's so powerful is because it puts you in a place where you have to be confronted with the masks that you're wearing, where you have to be confronted with these things that you tell yourself. How many times do you retake your video before you post it? Here's my challenge to you. Start doing videos and posting the first take. I dare you. Right. And the nice thing about all this stuff is you get to take it at your own pace. right? You can be as vulnerable or as cautious as you want to be. You have eternity. You don't have to become enlightened in this lifetime. Integrating your fractured self. This was a huge, huge, huge one for me. And I had some experiences with the plant sacraments, which went a long way towards accomplishing exactly all of this. Really getting connected to my own feminine and allowing that to come up and be expressed. And that was actually one of the healings that happened in my relationship to my father. I mean, he's been dead 18 years, but I had through the help of these plant sacraments, I had the opportunity to confront him, and in that process, I started expressing myself to him in the things that had been suppressed in me. Here, I'm gonna switch over here, take the screen share off for a second, so that you can hear this story, because this is a really big one, and it's important, especially for us men, but for all of us, for the women too, right? Because this is just as true for the women, is that your femininity, despite the fact that you are women, your femininity has not been accepted in a large part by our society, by our culture. You know? And this was one of the things that was so formational to my issues, as I shared my story with you in the beginning, is that this feminine aspect of me was very strongly suppressed by my father. It was not accepted at all. And I understand why. It was, he got the same treatment, and his father got the same treatment, and it's been passed down through the generations. But what happened for me was that, and I won't go into all the details of it, I'll just let you know that by the end of that experience, I sat there for a week wondering if I was gay and just didn't know it, because of some of the stuff that was coming out of me and being expressed. Now, once I worked my way through what was actually happening, I realized it's pretty easy to tell, you know, if you're gay or not. What are you attracted to, right? But what was coming up, what was being expressed, was this really strong feminine side, and I have such a deep and profound respect for the women. And I never understood before how incredible of a aspect it is to be feminine, to be, you know, this receiver and this nurturer and this giver of life that you are. I really hope I come back as a woman in the next life. I would love that. But integrating the self, really important. The shadow self as well. Getting in touch with your dark side. You wonder why we have more psychopaths in society today than ever before, it's got to come out somewhere. If it's getting suppressed, which it is very heavily in our culture, it's got to come out somewhere. And people they shudder and they go, oh my God, how could anybody do that? How could Ted Bundy murder all those women? How could anybody do those horrific things? The truth is that if you had the totality of that person's experiences, you would do exactly the same thing as they have done. And the truth is that you have that capacity to do what they did. But we don't want to see that. There's things about ourselves we really don't want to see. And you gotta love all of it. So, I'm gonna wrap it up here, and then open it up for another Q&A, and then that's it. So, let me see. Okay. You should have my screen again. Let me check. Yes. Alright. Alright. So just a couple more things. Honor your feelings. Oops, it disappeared. Honor your feelings. This is really critical because what you do not own will own you. Right? We are on this constant search. We want to feel better. We want to have better relationships. We want to enjoy life more. It's not about feeling better. It's about feeling what is. Right? And so the other comment under there, learn how to share feelings without blaming. That's actually something that we're going to talk about next week, because webinar number 2 is going to be how to specifically apply these things to your partner relationships, and then webinar number 3 will be specific to your family and your children and your personal family. Right? So this one is really just focusing entirely on the aspects of how it applies to the relationship with yourself. That's been the main focus of this whole webinar. We're going to talk about how to start applying it to your relationships next week. Give up being right. Drop all expectations. You have seldom, if ever, experienced people for who they are. You and we all have done this, and we all continue to do it to different degrees, and it's just a matter of becoming aware of it. But the problem is that we've always been experiencing that person through expectations or through our stories about that person, and there is no room for expectations in a conscious relationship. Somebody said, well, what isn't that, can't we have expectations? Certain, talk about what kind of expectations. There is one exception, in my opinion, and we'll talk about that in detail in next week. And that exception is when it comes to relationships, you do have the right to expect the other person to have integrity. So to do what they say they will do. I think that's the only fair expectation. That's it. Everything else is just going to keep you from having an intimate relationship. Okay, so here's some of the other things that we're going to talk about, just so you can see them real quick. We're going to talk about next week. Practice holding the space, maintaining your integrity, learning how to listen, closing the chapter, committing to transparency and whatnot. But those are for next week. Let's switch over here. Stop sharing. There we go. So that's it. I tried to, there's a lot of stuff, and I tried to weed out as much as I could and still fit it all into an hour, and we still went over an hour. So those of you that have stuck with me for that long, glad you're still here. If you had to take off, I totally get it. And I'm open for any other questions that you guys have or comments. I'm gonna take a minute and come back just to account for the delay that I told you about. Did you know I grin a lot of times just because I'm nervous? That's how I deal with my fears. I just laugh at them. All right, I'll be back in just a minute. Who said that? I'd like to see you as a woman, dearie. I'll bet you would. Well, you just have to look me up in the next life then, won't you? Okay, for some reason... Oh, you guys are rating the questions? Is that why they're not going in order? Because the questions are getting mixed up here in my list. Well, learn by doing. Let's see. Okay. Correct. So, if nobody has any questions, then I'm going to wrap it up here with you. I have enjoyed this experience of stepping past my fears and doing this. And I deeply appreciate the opportunity that you guys have given me to share. And there's a couple thoughts that I will leave you with. One of them is, this is my experience. This is my stuff, and you may not agree with everything that I'm sharing here. I think that's great. I think it's critical that we develop that personal relationship with the cosmos ourselves. And all that I can do is just share with you what has worked for me, and continue to hold the space, because that's what we're doing here. That's what makes this group so frickin' awesome. Is that we're creating a space where people are free to be their true selves, if they choose to be, and nobody's going to make you. but you have that opportunity, and you can express your true identity, and you can talk about the things that are difficult to talk about, and you can explore the outer edges of your humanity and have a complete vacuum of judgment. And that's the space that we're learning how to hold for ourselves. And the more stable we get in holding that for ourselves, the more stable we can be in holding that for others. So I have a challenge for you for this next week. And the challenge for you is this: to find a person that you have difficulty accepting or tolerating. Somebody that rubs you the wrong way. And spend at least 15 minutes with that person and practice holding the space for them to show up exactly as they are, without them knowing that that's what you're intentionally doing, without them being consciously aware of it. Just to connect with them beyond the stories that you have about them, and then to share with the group what you saw in yourself that was keeping you from seeing the divine in that person. That's my challenge. So with that, let's take one last look, and see. Okay. Ollie, you are so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. He says, this is Ollie and Nadia, and we love you, and you're doing great. I love you too. You guys are awesome. Jessica, you said, what about the child creator and the last one, Zen? Oh, I think you're talking about the aspects of the fracture itself. We've got all week, guys, to talk about all of this stuff in the group. Really, what I wanted to do was just give you some bullet points of some specific things, and then what we can do is we can flesh those out. This is just fuel for discussion, and if you need help or clarity on how to put these things into practice, you can ask me. There's a ton of other people that have experience with different elements of this along the way. So just, we'll talk about this stuff in the group. If you need that kind of clarification. Thank you so much for this webinar, Levi. Really, really great. Thank you for your surrender as well. Yes. You're welcome. Thank you. That's what life is about, right? It's about surrender. It's about giving it up. And I get to give it up on my own terms. The funny thing is that we get to see how far that gets us. And eventually we realize, screw it. Just give it up completely. Which is a lot easier said than done. Comment. I find the idea that because we suppress our shadows, i.e. demons, to be really profound. I took a psych and fear class that discussed why we watch horrors. It is theorized that we need to get it out somehow, and that is an acceptable way of doing it. I know, it's really interesting, isn't it? I could have long and really fun and entertaining conversation about this, but let's do that in the group. Guys, I appreciate you being patient. I was going to say I'm sorry, but one of the things that I'm working on these days is I'm learning how to stop apologizing. I had an experience with my plant sacrament teachers that taught me that lesson. And so instead of apologizing, I say thank you for being patient, or thank you for whatever. There's nothing to be sorry for, ever. There's plenty to be grateful for. Never anything to be sorry for. So what I was saying is, all of the questions are mixed up here on the side, and I am not getting them in chronological order. So you may have asked a question, and because it didn't pop up on the top of the list, I didn't see it. And scrolling through, I'm just getting the ones that I can see. Oh, comment from Catherine. I love compliments. Catherine says, "Oh, so beautiful, Levi. Thanks for sharing. I totally resonate with everything except the notion of what you call fair expectation that others have integrity." Next week's topic, I know. Yeah, we can talk about that stuff in the group. As I said, these are all my experiences, and these are things that you get to take and apply them in your own life as you see it and how it works for you. But I am happy to expound on that a lot more for anybody who cares to. But it is next week's talk. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, that's it. Thank you, all of you, for joining me. And those of you who couldn't make it, but you watched this after the fact, thank you as well. Thank you, Love Beyond Expectations group, for having had such a powerful impact on my life and helping me to springboard my way into the fullest expression of my being and doing what I really feel passionate about, which is this. So, I love you guys, and I will see you on the playground.